Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The Gray Area. A little bit of a weird week. Going to be a little bit of a weird show. Thursday football, followed by Thursday football. My whole schedule's off, and everything is weird. So we're going to talk about what we learned. We're going to scrap numbers because there's only a couple that matter. We'll talk about what the Lions can do moving forward through the next 5 weeks. The Doomers get their day, a reason to stay mad, and an updated look at the enemies list. Let's get to it. Before we get too deep in the weeds on things, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Please make yourself a part of the program here. That's how we get to make things go, and that's how we keep the content free. Let's start where I like to start, even though it's a few days later because of the weird schedule, with what we learned. First lesson we learned is off the field. Don't trust a headline. We went from Ragnow to Ragnow.
How about new?
In seemed like minutes. He was nowhere, then he was going to save everybody, and then he was gone, like Kaiser Soze, just that fast. You had headlines about Lamb Barney that came and went much more, gravely, pun intended. It's been a weird week, man, for the things that are coming and going in and out of the media. That doesn't even get me to the Kirby Joseph stuff, and most of that is Kirby Joseph led. So as of this recording, I have no idea what to say about that guy because he's telling one group of people his knee is done and never going to get better. And then he's at practice. Granted, he's wearing a big brace, but can't trust a headline. Don't know up from down. No idea what's going on in the world there at Allen Park. And that's a weird one because this team is usually pretty transparent and does business above board, and it's been a weird week for not seeming to know what's going on. Another thing we learned, and this is personal to me, and I think probably reflected in the experience of a handful of people, this team's not as good as I thought they were. They're just not. It's not to say they're bad. That's not the same question. They're just not as good as I thought they were. They have enough players from their primary roster. They have enough star power on offense and defense to be playing much better ball. And they haven't showed up in ways that we haven't seen them not show up for a few years. Even last year, with all of the injuries and all of the problems on defense and all of the weight they had to put in the offense to keep them afloat, this team executed crisply. They seem to have just organizationally a whole other gear than they have this year, and they are just not as good as I thought they were. I thought they'd be able to weather the staff changes. I thought they'd be able to handle some of the attrition that comes to every team via injuries. None of those things have worked out that way, and they're just not playing nearly up to the standard that I had expected them to. The other thing we learned, and this is a drum I've been beating, and it's pretty basic. It goes probably without saying. The interior O-line is the number one priority in the offseason. It has to be. And I don't think that's an unachievable goal, and there will be time to really get in nuts and bolts on the offseason. I will explain in a little while why I'm not going to do that right now today as we sit here in early December. But the interior O-line is the biggest problem on the team. Goff is getting heated up. He's getting hit a bunch. The run game isn't functioning the way that it should, even though it's got talent in the backfield. The interior O-line is a problem. The O-line as a whole, anybody not named Penei Sewell, has a lot of room for growth. And that has to be, going into the offseason, the number one thing to get fixed because none of the offense works without it. You lose an injury, you lose a tight end to injury, you lose a wide receiver to injury, you can lose a running back to injury, anybody but the quarterback, and you can still function as an offense. The interior O-line getting blasted through with defensive tackles and blitzes and games and schemes in the middle of that offensive line is the problem with this squad, and they have got to get that remedied. The other thing we learned, this defense has got to get back to fundamentals. You're seeing some things, whether it's communication in the secondary and handoffs when they're in zone, to Aiden Hutchinson once again sprinting upfield and running himself out of plays. They are just not playing good fundamental ball. And you've heard as much from Kelvin Shepard. You heard it from Aiden Hutchinson this week. You heard it from Brian Branch this week. You've heard it from the head man, Dan Campbell himself. They have got to get back to some very basic fundamentals on that defense and start executing the way it's drawn up and making the plays that are there. Because right now you got some guys that are either not playing their assignments because they don't know them, or they're not playing their assignments because they're trying to play hero ball, and that is adding up to some problems on that defense that they just can't afford. The offense is the offense. You're stuck with what you got. We're going to dance with the girl that brung us there, and so the defense has got to step up, and they haven't been able to do that the past couple of weeks. They're just getting gashed on some plays that they shouldn't be. You play fundamental defense, and you'll fix a lot of that. Another thing we learned is that the coaches just have to be better all the way around. And that's a Monday through Friday thing as much as it is a Sunday thing. I know it manifests and everybody sees the mistakes with whether it's clock management or any of those things, and they're valid. Those are all valid. But the procedural issues, not having enough or having too many men on the field, not being able to call your timeouts in the correct manner, not having a challenge flag system in place, those are Monday through Friday problems. And the coaching staff has to be better. Now, the coaching staff, and by the coaching staff, I mean the head coach, threw the wrinkle into all of this when he decided to take on play calling duties. Been talking about it on this show for a couple of weeks now, that one of the important steps he was going to have to take aside from that was coming up with a new plan day-to-day for game week prep. And that is an evolutionary process that's just going to have to continue. He hasn't done enough yet because the Lions still look unprepared and unorganized on game day. And that's just coaching, man. Plain and simple, it just has to be better. And then finally, I mentioned this a minute ago, we know nothing about Kirby Joseph. Nothing at all. He was putting out the little clock, the rabbit from Alice in Wonderland, and staring at the clock, and it's almost time, and all of this other stuff. And then it seems like in the last 48 hours, that may have gone by the wayside. Dan Campbell letting it slip that his injury might last forever, and it's the kind of thing that could degenerate and be a problem. You've seen, if you're online, you follow Dr. Liao. He broke down everything that could be wrong with that knee. You have quotes from Kirby Joseph about how the knee just doesn't get better, and yet he shows up at practice, and he's running around out there with that big, heavy knee brace on. So no idea what's going on with Kirby Joseph. I hope it's not as bad as all that, and that an offseason can provide some kind of remedy that keeps him upright and playing football. But obviously, when you start talking about chronic issues and ones that you take with you in life, all of that takes a backseat to the guy just living without a limp moving forward in his post-football career. Moving forward, normally I do numbers over narratives here, but we're a few days removed from the game, and I figure like the numbers have been beaten to death, and besides, the only numbers that matter are 7. That's not enough, and 5, and that's too many. That only pertains to the record. And those are the only numbers that really matter at this point after the loss on Thanksgiving and a little bit of a rocket ride through the last 5 weeks, and a game against the Bears that suddenly seems really important, and a game against the Rams that'll be anything but a cakewalk. And even the Steelers, who, if they can figure out how to play defense, could be a problem. They got to win more games. And to that end, trying to figure out what this team can actually do. I know there are a lot of people that want to say, well, they should have done this or they should have done that. Okay, we can talk about that again in the offseason. What can they do? And go back to a little offshoot of talking about the coaching. Clean it the hell up. I mean, clean it the hell up. Not making plays is one thing. Not knowing plays is a whole other deal. And I don't know what's happening in Allen Park, and no one does, and don't let them tell you they do, or they would have been on the Frank Ragnow news. There's something missing from the preparation that this team is getting on game week. There's a couple of things that they're missing, and they've got to clean that up, and that's procedural. It's not about the game plan, because the game plan never involves 10 people on the field, and it never involves 12 people on the field. Kelvin Shepard made that very clear today. I've been playing this game since I was 5, and it's always been 11 on 11. So fix that, and that's something that they can do, because the coaches and the team are the only ones that know what it is that has changed, or what it is that's being ignored, or what it is that they used to do that they clearly have just been missing on, doing too much of, doing not enough of, whatever adjustment needs to happen. Clean it the hell up. Another thing they can do, and this is in the game, run right. get behind Penei Sewell. Run in that man's direction. Because with all of the problems on your offensive line, he's the one you don't have. He's doing his job, and he's still a monster out there. And he's still got to be a guy that's the answer. When the chips are down and you need a play and you need a few yards, run off that man's hip. Another thing you can do on game day, mix up the personnel. I know just on my Twitter feed that if fans can recognize the play that's coming based on the numbers of the players on the field, that the defense probably knows too. And you're going to have to start to mix that up. You're going to have to start to do some things that people don't have on tape, or you're going to continue to get the same results. And I think some of that got set back with the change with the play caller. You're now reestablishing some routines and some systems, and you're starting to see the same things because now it's been a few games and guys all have their habits and they all fall into their ruts. And there were people that complained about Ben Johnson and his predictability too. But in this case, that is something that you can do. Self-scout, get in there, figure out when defenses are adjusting to your personnel groupings, and then mix them up and mix up your formations. And you're going to have to take a look at everything from your pre-snap motions to the actual bodies on the field. But that is something that the Lions have control over, and I'm hoping this would be redundant if it echoed through the halls at Allen Park, that they're already working on that, because I'm starting to see a pretty steady torrent of people calling out plays on Twitter before the snap has happened. And if they can do that on the interwebs from their couch, a defensive coordinator in the booth can damn sure do it. The other thing, get the ball out. That's something they've got to protect Jared Goff. And it's not going to happen with blocking. I think they've proven what they have up front as far as blockers. They've got to find a way to get that ball out of his hands in under 2 seconds if they can. He can't be holding on to it. He can't continue to take the shots that he's taking. And I say that because I spent all day Sunday watching football. And I saw Kirk Cousins. I saw Tyrod Taylor. I saw Jacoby Brissett. I saw... who else? Mason Rudolph. I saw something called Max Brosmer playing quarterback. And for all the Lions' problems, and they've got some, they can fix enough of them. I won't say all of them. They can fix enough of them to get to the playoffs. You can't fix not having your quarterback. If they lose Jared Goff because they get him murdered, death killed in the pocket, that's it. It's game over, and we can officially move on to mock draft season and start talking about offseason free agent priorities and who's getting cut and all of those salary cap implications. We can have that conversation because he has to stay upright. If he doesn't, you're sunk. So get the ball out of his hands, get working on that, whether it involves more of those dreaded screens or some quick slants to JMO and get him loose in space, whatever has to happen. But you got to draw it up so it's up and out of his hands, and other teams do it. It is possible even within this offense. He doesn't have time for a 5 to 7 step drop right now. Maybe if you get the run game going and maybe if you get the quick release game going, you can build up to the point where some of that play action stuff deeper in the pocket is available. But as long as guys are getting truck sticked into his lap, you got to get the ball out of his hands. Otherwise, he's going to be on the injured list, and that will be curtains for the season. Now we have to give a tip of the cap to the Doomers. They get their day. It's been a rough couple of weeks here with everything that's happened with the Lions on and off the field, and the Doomers are having a ball with it. Here, look, I'll just say it. I've been doing sports in some form or fashion for a long time, and if you predict bad things, eventually you're going to be right, even with the best teams. There are going to be people that predict fall off, and eventually, nobody stays on top all the time, and nobody wins every championship, and every season isn't fantastic. So eventually you're going to be good. It's lazy, but apparently it's very satisfying because there are some people that make base their entire identity off of it, and oh boy, have they had some fun. It's fair to say, and I have, that the Lions botched this OC hiring again, and that's a major issue, and then that's something that Dan has to get right. So the Doomers get one there. The hashtag Fire Morton crew. I don't know that fixes your problem given what we've seen with the offense, but certainly the fact that you had disruption on the coaching staff and that Dan Campbell felt strongly enough that he'd gotten the hire wrong is indicative of a mistake made. and it is now rippled through the rest of the football season, and it provided a disruption that if you were on board with throwing that guy under the bus, I guess you win. Again, I'll never understand the doomer mentality. It doesn't seem like any fun. It's got to be about the I was right thing. And again, if you predict bad stuff, eventually you're going to be right because every team falls off. But I don't know. That's fair to point out because it has been a problem. It's fair to point out the pass rush deficiencies. You've got no Josh Paschal this year. That didn't work out. Marcus Davenport is a temporary solution at best. And you still need something else on that defensive line. Even though you got Aleem McNeil back, even though you've got Tyleek, even though Aiden Hutchinson is out there, teams have figured that out. So you don't have enough to do what you're doing the way that you want to do it along the defensive line. And you need to address that. So the folks that were out there making fun of that, again, they get to do that. It's also fair, and I am in this camp, and I don't consider myself one of these doomers, but it is fair to expect this team to aggressively address this stuff in the offseason. I'm not of the mind that any of the things that have happened this year to affect this season in a negative way are permanent or unfixable or a result of some systemic issue. They can be addressed. You can fix the interior of that offensive line with a couple of moves. You find a couple of free agents, you throw in another draft pick with what you've already got, and presto changeo, you can fix an offensive line. Ask the Chicago Bears. They managed to do it in an offseason. So that can be done. Pass rush can be addressed in an offseason. There are some tough decisions that have to be made up and down the roster, and I predict that some names that people like, some jerseys that people have bought, probably going to be rotated out of town. But that's life in the NFL. I think as a fan, it is fair to expect this to be addressed, regardless of the outcome of the season. And they could still make the playoffs. They could still get some of these things ironed out enough to win enough games to get in the postseason and maybe even win one, which a Lions fan from 4 years ago would tell you is a huge win. And now the expectation has changed. And with that comes the burden of this responsibility. So aggressively addressing this in the offseason is a must. But anyone making their clicks or they're getting their engagement and their numbers off of Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes level firing / hot seats, please ignore those people. Don't be that guy. That's just somebody out there looking to rage bait you. The Oxford Dictionary word of the year, by the way, rage bait. It is something that is prevalent in the YouTube sphere and certainly on Twitter with a certain breed of Lions fans. So careful with those people because that's ridiculous and stupid and dumb and wrong. And that isn't the solution to the problem. There are solutions to problems to be had. And I think you got to trust the people that went from 3 wins to 9 wins to 12 wins to 15 wins to this season to figure out what it is that has caused this hiccup and get after it. There's also the matter of staying mad. Stay mad. My kids say that to me whenever I've let them have it for not emptying the dishwasher or something. Stay mad. Well, the Lions should. That might be the thing that gets them through this game against Dallas and into a little bit of a break before they go into the final 4 games of the season. Kelvin Shepherd certainly sounded pissed off when he was talking about the pass rush and the fact that they weren't getting home on the quarterback to make any defensive system work. I believe the question was, do you feel like you're getting enough pass rush to make your defensive system work? And he said they're not getting enough pass rush to make any defensive system work. And I wholeheartedly agree. You can't combine man coverage and among the league worst time to throw. That's a bad formula, and it makes your corners and your safeties look terrible, and it makes communication even harder, and you're making a bad thing worse with all the injuries in that secondary. Pass rush has got to find a way to get home. Shepard's pissed off about it. Hopefully, he passes some of that on to his team. John Morton said everybody's had a hand in the failings, and that it's one thing, then it's followed by another thing, then it's followed by another thing. He was pilloried for that when he was the one calling the plays. Starting to look like maybe the man was onto something. And I know that it wasn't real popular for him to point fingers. Stay mad. Maybe it's time to point fingers. Maybe it's time to name names. And maybe it's time to hold those people accountable for doing their jobs on Sundays, because right now it doesn't look great. Hutch said, that everyone talks about grit. I thought this was really interesting because for him, he's usually a pretty good brand manager. In those interviews, he gives the very rehearsed Russell Wilson-esque answers to questions. I don't blame him for that. But I thought he went off script a little bit when he said, everybody talks about grit. It's all over the building. Everybody describes us as gritty, and that's really easy when you're winning games. It's easy to be gritty when you're up at halftime. It's easy to be gritty when you're, 10-2. It's tougher when teams are beating you and they found some things and they're making you look bad, and even your wins aren't great, like that game against the Giants. Stay mad. If 97's ticked off, that might be good. Brian Branch said something very similar. He said, we play our game and we'll be fine. Well, that means he hasn't been playing his game. And everybody needs to be aware of that. Everybody needs to take stock of that, and everybody in that locker room needs to own that. Dan Campbell knows what it's like to be doubted, and he knows how to turn that into motivation. He was really good as the underdog. As the front runner, it's a different challenge, and it's a different job, and he's been dealt some different cards. So maybe it's time for him to turn on some of that old magic and get this team good and pissed off and let them know that nobody believes him in anymore. As of this recording, they're 3-point favorites at home, so they're getting home field advantage to the Cowboys. And that's it. And I wouldn't be surprised if that line moves quite a little bit as the news continues to trickle out of Detroit about this injury list coming up to Thursday night's game. There's something out there to be proven. This team has done this before, but they need to stay mad to do it. And we'll wrap things up with the traditional look at the enemies list. We'll start with the injury report. Can we please shut that down for just a week? Put the injury report on the enemies list? Enough already. We're talking about injuries that never heal. We've gone from IR stays to season ending to careers in the last handful of hours. It's depressing to think about. And this Lions team is only an injury or two away from it literally being out of reach. And there just not being enough bodies left, and not enough practice squad guys left, and not enough next man up to survive. So let's go ahead and shut the injury list down. We also need to put Dan's wheelbarrow on the enemies list. Got to change the way you call the games. You have to. You don't have the team that you thought you did. Go back to what we learned. This team's not as good as I thought they were. I've been watching Dan Campbell press conferences ever since that man arrived in Detroit, and his body language is all kinds of bad right now. I don't think he's got a team that's as good as he thought it was. And going for every fourth down and not kicking field goals and not punting ever is not going to work anymore. So you're going to need to tone some of that down, take the points when you can get them, keep it close by 3 at a time if your offense flames out, or Jared Goff has to take a sack because the interior O-line isn't there. I get it. Dan Gamble, and he's got the onions and all of the things. That's all well and good when things are going great. They haven't been as of late, and so he needs to recalibrate that, made all the more important by the fact that he's calling plays now. He's got less time to think about the situation, and that's why he needs to take a step back from his approach just a little bit, ever so slightly. You don't have to go for it on every fourth down. It's okay to punt. Ask anybody that watches Iowa Hawkeye football. Punting's great. It's their favorite. Also on the enemies list, that whole group of defensive tackles in Dallas. They're going to be a problem. You're talking about Odigizigwa. I hope I said that right. Odigizigwa? Osa. I'm going to call him Osa. I'm terrible with the pronunciations. Kenny Clark. I can get that one right. And Quinnen Williams. Those guys, problem. They are going to be a problem. Dallas has done well to recover from losing old boy to Green Bay, and they're now fixed at the defensive tackle position in a big way. And of course, with all the attention on the interior O-line, they're going to have a plan, and they're going to have able bodies, and they are going to be a problem. It's something that the Lions are going to have to account for by any means necessary, because Dallas is as good in the middle of their defensive front as just about anybody in the league. Also making the enemies list, George Pickens. Not just because he's over 1,000 yards and he's actually a really good receiver, but also because he will match your crazy. And we have seen, Ryan Branch get suckered into some things. We've seen Amik Robertson get into shouting matches that walk right up to the line of taking a really badly timed 15-yard penalty. And George Pickens is the kind of, he's the straw that stirs that drink for sure. Let him go mental. Let him take the ill-timed penalty. Let him make the big mistake. Don't let George Pickens be the reason that a drive keeps going in the form of a penalty. He's enough of a problem catching the football. And then finally, making the enemies list, the SOLers. Boy, they are warming up in the back of the theater. They can't wait to sing. And I'm not sure why. I don't know why. I've had people on YouTube and in the comments question, how long have you been watching this team? I'm like, well, I'm 50. I have a signed Eric Hipple pennant, so I've been watching for a while. I never understood the SOLers. I didn't understand them when the Lions were terrible for years and years and years. I knew why they were mad, but I couldn't understand the fascination with wallowing in the gloom. And they can't wait to get those paper bags out. Bonus points if they're actually Kroger. Man, just put it away. None of us know how the season's going to end. The Lions still have everything to play for. They could absolutely get into the playoffs. And we have seen dumb, bad, stumbly playoff entrances turn into really, really magical runs. This team still has a ton of talent. They are still developing their plan from a coaching perspective. They got precious little time to get it right, but they do have time to get it right, and they've got the bodies in Allen Park to do that. So take the bag and the SOL and shove it somewhere. Your orifice of your choosing. I can't deal with those folks. And they are starting to creep in ever so slowly into the conversation. That's it for me, man. It's time for me to get out of here. Kind of a weird gray area this week with the weird schedule. We'll be doing the post-game show with Chris after the Dallas game. Hopefully things are decidedly more upbeat. I need some good news, especially after the Thanksgiving beatdowns of every team that I follow. The Red Wings got beat twice. The Pistons got beat twice. The Wolverines got beat by the Buck. It was just a nightmare. So hopefully it's better on Thursday night. I'll be back then. Please follow the channel. Subscribe to all of the things. I imagine we'll be hearing from Bish and Brown, Risden, and all of those guys up to and after the game against Dallas. So until next week.